I kept these nice walnut slabs in my grandpa's attic to dry for a couple of years, alongside some ash slabs, and after I brought them to my workshop, it was time to turn them into something nice. Now the problem I have here with these two walnut slabs is that only one of them is an actual slab and I have to cut a slice from it and glue it to the thinner one. Easier said than done. First I need a straight edge on each board, but unfortunately my skill saw is broken and I have to do that with my table saw. So I came up with this idea to apply a strip of wood on the boards that slide into the slot of my table saw, and by that, after cutting it, I'm obtaining a decent straight edge. Surprisingly, it worked quite well. After cutting them to a manageable dimension for my planer, I didn't take into account that my table saw blade wouldn't cut through the whole width of the boards. So I was trying to cut the rest of it with a handsaw, only to find out that it would have probably worked if I would have spent a whole day on them. So I decided to cut them in half on the table saw, and after that I was able to slice them properly. After the slices were done, I made a walnut and wood glue sandwich with the few clamps I have in my workshop, which were not enough of course for this application. Even if I had more, still wouldn't be enough. I think this is the woodworker paradox, because the more clamps you have, the more you need. They are never enough. After the glue was finally set, I ran them through the planer to their final thickness, measured them and cut them to their final length. I'm going to use the bigger leftovers to make those nice strips which will be placed on the side of the legs, as you have seen at the beginning of this video. Now it's time to finally plane the edges by using first the table saw and after that running them on the planer a few times to even the marks from the blade. I know that this is not practical because you usually run them only on the planer if you have a guiding fence on it, which I don't. Because I bought this thing used and it didn't have one. Well, I bought it more because it was cheaper, with the thought in mind that I'm gonna build a fence myself, which even today is in the planning process. I promise I'm gonna build it. I know that the rule of thumb for gluing a board is to alternate the wood pieces to compensate for the wood movement, but in my case, if I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna ruin the pattern of the grain. It's my preference, so I'm choosing the design with the risk of the whole thing cupping on me in the future. Well, I hope that this is not gonna happen. These are my primitive shop-made clamps. They have a simple wooden wedge that you hit with a hammer, and by that the whole board gets squeezed. They are effective but a little bit tedious to set up. Of course, they don't compare with those on the market, but they are a great way to make bigger boards on a budget. Also, they are easy to make. I'm also planning to build a better version of them using threaded rods, which will be more effective than this. Next, I am starting building the legs. I am making them from ash and I think this wood will do a great team with the walnut. I first cut the pieces to a rough length using my jigsaw and then cut them to a rough thickness on the table saw, finishing through the planer and repeating the boring process for the rest of the pieces. Well, for me this is not boring, it's quite fun. If I must do this for the rest of my life, I don't think I will ever get bored. But for you guys, I think it is, because no one will watch a dude for hours straight how he only cuts wood. After all that, I cut them to their final length and next I am making the holes and the slot. I first mark where the holes will be and then start drilling using my shop-made mortising machine. I built it using a CNC spindle and an old Kitty mortising machine. Here I drill the holes using a basic drill bit which is not indicated because it doesn't handle the speed of the spindle and heats up smelling like burnt popcorn. Carbide bits are required, but I don't have this specific dimension. I marked the other pieces and drilled the holes using a hand drill. I would have used the mortising machine, but I couldn't find a way to place the pieces securely on the table. When it comes to slot making, this thing really shines. It saves me a lot of time instead of using the router. I am cutting now some 1 by 1 centimeters strips from the walnut leftovers to add on the side of the legs, which I think will offer an interesting aspect and also add some extra strength against racking. I was inspired to do this by those decorative strips of wood that are installed on walls in the interior of a room. I do not know exactly what are they called, but they look great and I think they will look great on my desk too. Also, I cut some tiny cubes that will act like spacers between the strips, and after that I made the slots in which all these things will be assembled. The top of the desk has a live edge and I thought to also cut on these pieces a nice arch to match with it a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a furniture designer but a woodworker who has much more to learn with a bunch of ideas in his head, trying to make the best of it. The pieces are finally ready for assembly, but first I need to do the last step and the most important one, because if I don't do this right, the whole project will be a waste of time in my opinion. So a proper sanding process will make a huge difference. And finally, the assembly part, my favorite part. I don't know if you can relate, but when the pieces I built come together nicely, I feel again like a kid who built something from Legos. But the Legos are Legos I built to come together in a way I want, which is more amazing. I think this is what we all are. Kids in adult bodies playing around in this journey called life. After the glue hardened, I started cleaning the excess of it with a freshly sharpened chisel. It's amazing what you can do with a well-sharpened chisel. I am making also a nice chamfer on the bottom of the legs. Probably would have been faster if I did this with the router, but I like to do it with my chisel. It's more fulfilling, let's say. It feels like you have more control in doing the task compared to a machine. I'm finally ending the process of building the legs by sanding down the edges first for the finish to hold better in the future, and second for the love of my fingers because I lost count of how many splinters and cuts I had from a sharp edge. The legs are looking good so far. Now moving to the tabletop. Tabletop? I mean desktop. The top of a table is called a tabletop and the top of a desk is called a desktop. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now you're gonna hear me from time to time talking in gibberish because English is not my native language, as you can hear by my accent. I am Romanian and I am doing my best, and I want to apologize if I am offending someone because nowadays seems to be a trend getting offended from meaningless things. I am learning here, okay? I'm learning by doing it, and this is maybe the best learning method in everything. So please go easy on me. I want to mention that this is my first time working with Walnut, and I was not expecting this wood to be so easy to work with and so easy to sand and finish. Also, the pattern of the grain is something different than any wood I work with. As weird as it sounds, I think I'm in love with Walnut. While we are getting closer to the end of this video, I want to thank so much for those who subscribe to my channel so far and those who are willing to do so in the future. Because of you, I am closer to 500 subscribers, which for me is quite unbelievable. I mean, when I started in 2023, I thought that when I post my first videos, no one will watch them. I thought they will be boring and meaningless. Well, they are not perfect, there is always room for improvement, but I was not expecting such great results, and now I am glad that I started my YouTube journey. So thank you, I really appreciate it. For the finish, I am using some oil that I have in my shop. It's a mix of different oils and other additives for faster drying. Probably if I'd used Rubio or another good quality brand of oil, maybe the results would have looked better, but it looks pretty good with this one I have. Finally, I am mounting the legs to the top and I'm eager to see what have I done. Is this thing stable enough or not? And to my disappointment, things are not looking good. I mean, I'm not going to dance on it, but still, this is no bueno and I need to fix it. Back to the drawing board. So I quickly plane again, cut, plane again, marked, made slots, glue it, fixed another mistake, sanding it down, and the results are great. It is much more stable now. Walnut is truly a special species of wood when it comes to furniture making, and I am glad that this project comes to an end with great results. Thank you if you made it to the end of this video, and if you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to my channel to be notified when I am posting new videos in the future. And for the end, I prepared a nice outro and I hope you like it. See you in the next one.